The WNBA on ESPN, where people who don't watch basketball talk about basketball. And that's one of the best things about ESPN. You know, the face of sports and the face of basketball on ESPN was caught playing solitaire in the second quarter of the finals. So let's take a listen to this. Hilarious take.
Best team basketball without Caitlin Clark. And that's because she's like the sun that offense kind of orbits around. The ball is constantly in her hands, which just made their offense extremely easy to guard. Now, without her in the lineup, Stephanie White had to decide who else was going to get in the mix. And their offense became so much more diverse. We saw Kelsey Mitchell having a tremendous season. Lexie Hull got in the fold. Aaliyah Boston, another dominant season. But all because they had to do it without Caitlin Clark. And that made their offense extremely hard to guard.
All right, let's go through the points. So, the Indiana Fever being more dangerous without Caitlin Clark. Or the Indiana Fever being a bad offensive team with Caitlin Clark. They, from the Olympics till she got injured, with Caitlin Clark, from the Olympics till now, with Caitlin Clark on the floor, Indiana are one of the greatest WNBA offenses of all time. With Caitlin Clark off the floor, the Indiana Fever are a bang average offense. The Indiana Fever, up until the last 3 games of the season, when teams were basically lying down for the Fever. The Mystics hardly played their players. The Lynx played their bench in the first quarter, from the first quarter. Other than the last 3 games, when teams lay down for the Fever, the Indiana Fever were sub 500 without Caitlin Clark. In the playoffs, the Indiana Fever did not play better offensively without Caitlin Clark. They just didn't. If you want to make the argument that the Indiana Fever are were a better defensive team without Caitlin Clark, cool. What we're not doing is saying they were harder to guard. Also, she brings up Lexie Hull. The same Lexie Hull, who before Caitlin Clark's injury was averaging 11 points per game. She ended the season averaging 7. I want to show you Lexie Hull. If you guys don't know about Lexie Hull, she is the biggest Caitlin Clark merchant in basketball history. She spent 2 seasons in a row. I understand Unrivaled isn't really basketball. She spent 2 years in a row as last place, dead last in Unrivaled scoring. But let's just look at game log for Lexie Hull. Game log. What year are we in? Is it really not going to let me? Is it really not going to let me look at the game log from other years? Oh my God, it's actually not. It's not going to let me look at Lexie Hull's game log, so we're going to have to hope that the WNBA game log will show it. So obviously, let's look at the game log here. 16, 15, 6, 7. She's one of the most inconsistent players there's ever been in the WNBA. And of course, the WNBA website barely works. But basically, Lexie Hull she'll admit it herself. She would have been out of the league if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark being drafted to the Fever. Because up until Caitlin Clark was being drafted, Lexie Hull was shooting 18% for her career from 3. 18% for her career. Lexie Hull in the corner of a Caitlin Clark pass is literally her best shot. Kelsey Mitchell, yes. Kelsey Mitchell scored more points because she was allowed to ISO ball. She was allowed to go ISO. Aaliyah Boston's points went so far down without Caitlin. She had some big games. But if you notice anything with Aaliyah Boston is the player outside of Lexie Hull that benefits the most from Caitlin Clark's gravity. Like, if you look at games where Aaliyah Boston set her career high, outside of a couple against Atlanta, maybe, and sometimes she faces Tina Charles, the vast majority of them are Caitlin Clark hits her in the mid post and she shoots those floaters. That's her shot. That's her shot. She becomes an offensive hub. Her game changes. And I mean, she's a good offensive hub, but like, if you're talking about their offense, Aaliyah Boston getting more scores, she doesn't. She scores way less when Caitlin Clark doesn't play. Lexie Hull was one of the worst examples to use And being like, Stephanie White had to, look on other players. Stephanie White admitted herself she didn't do anything. Stephanie White became a reactive coach, as in she had so many new players in that they didn't run any offenses. They winged it. They nearly made it to the finals on the power of friendship. They winged it. They didn't run an offense. They went iso ball. They went your turn, my turn. And it just happened that other teams either choked or they got hot. And that's the thing, people don't understand about basketball, is that you can out-talent your way to a win if you get hot. You can play bullshit. And if you go your turn, my turn, your players get hot and hit tough shots, you can win a game. You can win a game. If you leave players open, they miss. That was Christy Side's tactic. Christy Side's tactic on defense was leave the other team open and pray they miss. Sometimes it worked. Like, Christy Side's tactic was leave them open and hope they don't score above 84 points. Sometimes it works. But the Indiana Fever, literally, they won on the power of friendship. And what people don't understand is the difference between Caitlin Clark on the floor and Caitlin Clark off the floor is not necessarily, this player scores more, this player scores more. It is how many open looks are generated. The Indiana Fever, we literally saw it in preseason. The Indiana Fever went 12 minutes without a half-court field goal without Caitlin Clark on the floor. 12 minutes. Like, Caitlin Clark generates open looks for every single player. There's no player in the league that generates more open looks than Caitlin Clark. And there are situations, and people are like, Iowa, she kind of didn't take the ball up that much. The difference is that in Iowa, they always got her the ball to end the offense. The Bluter offense was, I don't think this is what people don't understand with Caitlin on and off the ball, is you want Caitlin to be the primary decision maker. You want her to be the primary decision maker. The problem is with the Indiana Fever, if you take her off the ball, it's different. Kelsey Mitchell, if Caitlin Clark is on the wing and they're running a set and Kelsey Mitchell gets the ball on the wing, Kelsey Mitchell is going dribble, step back long two. That is the problem. And it's nothing about fit, because when Kelsey Mitchell's playing off the ball, she's the most deadly off the ball player in the league, outside of Paige Bueckers. She's the second most deadly off the ball player in the league. But it is statistically incorrect. And the Fever were significantly worse with Caitlin off the floor. Caitlin Clark was second in the league in plus minus. Or third in the league in plus minus. She was third in the league in plus minus. Per game, obviously. The Indiana Fever were barely, with Caitlin Clark off the floor, the Indiana Fever were barely competent. But Caitlin Clark on the floor, the Indiana Fever were plus 6. The Indiana Fever, till 3 games to go when teams started laying down for them, were minus without Caitlin Clark. The Indiana Fever did not lose a single game to a non-playoff team. They lost to the Valks twice, the Aces, the Atlanta Dream, and the New York Liberty. And it was the New York Liberty with a full team, which they didn't have at that stage. A New York Liberty started off season 10-0. A Dream team who were tied for the second seed. A Valks team who just had their number. And an Aces team who won a championship. They're the only teams the Indiana Fever lost to with Caitlin Clark. Without Caitlin Clark, they lost to, I think they got 1-3 against the Sparks. They lost to the Connecticut Sun. And they were a miracle performance from Kelsey Mitchell. Her best performance of her career. Away from losing to the Sun again. They only scraped one win against the Sparks because Odyssey Sims hit a game winner. They lost to the Dallas Wings. They lost to the Mystics. I think they lost once to the Mystics. They lost to the Mystics. The only non-playoff team that the Indiana Fever didn't lose to without Caitlin Clark was the Sky. There is no logic to this argument. The only logic is they went further in the playoffs. Okay, they played a shitty Atlanta Dream team who shit the bed and choked. The Indiana Fever were down 1, botched the offense to win, and for some reason, Bree Jones decided, I'm not going to guard Leah Boston, and left her under the basket for a layup. The Atlanta Dream choked versus the team they played in the 2024 Sun would have won the 2025 title. You're playing as a whole bunch of players who was their first time in the playoffs, and Bree Jones, who actually just shit the bed, or the first time on a semi-contending team. And then the Aces, the Aces weren't very good. I'm going to be real here. The Mercury, Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier both got injured in the playoffs. The Mercury, needed a choke job and a fee injury. Like, the Aces weren't very good last year. They weren't. And again, the 2024 Connecticut Sun dog walked that playoffs. Like, that team was 100 times better than the Phoenix Mercury. Especially after when Satu went down. And the Mercury just choked as well. The Aces, just like in 2023, just when it mattered, stepped up. But they weren't a good team. Like, if they faced a healthy Liberty or a healthy Lynx, quote unquote, stepping up when it mattered wouldn't have mattered late in games because they would have been getting blown out every game. So yeah, it makes no sense. By no metric are the Fever better or more dangerous without Caitlin Clark. It's just some bullshit that Monica McNutt and what's her name, Stephanie White's mentor says. Carolyn Peck.